This recipe is basically a version of the classic French steak à poivre, but with a couple of important changes to make it more suitable to restaurant service, specifically a thinner cut of meat so that it cooks faster, considerably less cognac to keep the cost down, and the use of both demi-glace and a concentrated powdered stock to provide the intense flavor that one expects in good restaurants these days. And before I get angry comments from someone, I want to mention that the use of a stock cube in this recipe came from a 3 Michelin-starred restaurant.
So to do this, we need some kind of beef cube. You don't want to use a cheap bouillon cube. It's got to be something with some quality to it. And I know this is an unorthodox method, but it works, and we use it in restaurants all the time. Take somewhere between 1/2 and 3/4 of one of these Gallina Blanca beef cubes for each steak, and I've also got green and black whole peppercorns that I'm going to grind by hand. You don't want to use a spice mill for this because it'll powder it, and you don't want a powdered pepper in it. You want it to have some texture, so you need to hand crack it. First, I powdered that stock cube, and now I'm going to add the peppercorns. A little bit more. And now you crack these. You don't want to pulverize them, but you don't want whole peppercorns in it either. And then you spread it out on a plate like this, and we turn our attention to the meat next. In order to make this economical and also to make it consistent, you get large pieces of meat like this, and you slice off your own steaks for this. Now I'm cutting this much thinner than most people would make this dish, because this is just a different version of it, that's all. And this particular piece we got here has got a chunk of fat in the middle that's not too desirable. Now I could ignore it, and the final dish would just have a chunk of fat in it, but this is a little bit heavy, so I'm going to go in here and try to get rid of this. And when we flatten this out, it'll be okay. It'll kind of stick together. Also, we've got a band here of connective tissue. This isn't going to be too pleasant either for somebody eating it. So I'm going to go in and excise this little piece here too. Just work the knife along and scrape it off. It comes off pretty easy. Okay. Now we've got a lump of meat. It's not very pretty in shape, but that's actually going to be okay for this dish, because this is not a dish that's going to plate up super neatly anyway, and it's going to be covered with sauce, so nobody will tell. Okay, we'll see what we do next. Now I'm going to put some cling film over it and pound it gently. You don't try to smash it. It's not a nail you're driving into a board. You just want to make it nice and even and break up some of those fibers so that it's more tender. When you pull it up from the board, it regains its shape a little bit, and you're going to put it into this spice mixture here. Press down on it on one side only, because this meat is relatively thin. We're not going to put the spices on both sides. It'll be overwhelming. We're just going to put it on this one side. It's got plenty of salt in there from that stock cube, and let it sit like this. And I'm going to put some olive oil on this side. Drizzle some olive oil on it. Make sure this is even. And I'm going to let this meat sit in the spices for a few minutes. Get it closer to room temperature, and also let the pan heat up. I haven't even started heating the pan yet, though. I'm just going to leave it sit like this for about 10 minutes before I even start heating the pan. And this is the time to assemble the rest of your ingredients. I've got the cream, Worcestershire sauce, cognac, good 1½ tablespoons of chopped shallots, half a teaspoon of dried parsley, butter, and the optional demi-glace, which of course I made myself. And I've got a lighter standing by, ready to flambe the cognac. And as soon as the time goes by and the pan gets warm, we'll begin. The pan gets up to about 300 Fahrenheit, Celsius. I'm going to put this meat on it, oil side down. And of course, if you're using a different cut, it would have held together better. This is the piece that I got. You know, Russian butchery's not always the best. And just to show you, I've got some seasoning left over on this plate. That's just fine. If you're making another one, of course, all the easier. Okay, so this has got to sit here and brown for a good 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, something like that. The heat on the stove is just over 7, about 7.5 out of 10. It's been 2 minutes now by the clock. I'm adding the butter to the pan. I'm going to really cook this steak well on this side first. Now that the butter is starting to melt, I'm going to add shallots. Okay. Now, flip it over. Okay. Now you can see it's got good browning on this side. The butter's holding it together. Now I'm going to add Worcestershire sauce. And then the cognac. And the cognac is going to go over the top of the steak. And then I'm going to flambe it. Stand back when you do this. Well, in reality, the steak is almost cooked at this point. You're just going to give it like another 30 seconds. Because it was pounded and it was a fairly thin piece of meat. Pieces of meat the way it is now. We're going to have to fix this back together on the plate when we plate it up, because it came apart a little bit. It's not an unusual thing. It's not a problem. Okay, I gave it just another minute here. We're going to move it over to a plate here to hold. Like I said, we'll fix this up later. And now we can add some demi-glace. If you don't have this, you can add beef stock, or you can add water and some cream and the dried parsley. And I'm actually turning the heat way down now. It's going down from 7.5 to about 3. I just want to thicken this up a little bit. In fact, actually I'm going to turn the heat off completely, because it's got enough residual heat there. This is going to thicken up without any more serious cooking. Okay, we're actually about ready to plate. And by the way, use heavy cream for this. Don't use light cream, or it won't come together nicely. Okay, this is ready to plate now.
If you want to know more about my adventures as a chef around the world and have some great laughs along the way, be sure to check out the video tour of my book, 40 Years in One Night. It's up on YouTube right now. Click the link. If you like my videos, look for my cookbook, now available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other internet bookseller sites. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.